Hi everyone, welcome to my Firebird's format meta guide. So it has taken a bit, but I think we have figured out most of what there is to find for the Firebird's wizard, and it's looking extremely good for season 23. So good in fact that it will most likely beat the red runs, and I believe most people playing with coordinated parties will go for this meta. It is extremely fun, it is something new and fresh, revolving around the V-Works Firebird wizard that has gotten significant buffs and changes with this patch. Once you have the basic setup and a coordinated party, you can farm anywhere from GR 110 plus all the way up to close to 130 with this. It is extremely strong and most likely going to be the top meta in season 23. So let's jump into this. We have a defeat planner here and there are a lot of different variations. So I am focusing on the 4-man speed setups only. There's 3 of those. One revolves around mirror images where you summon them and they will start attacking with flame blades and do most of the heavy lifting for you. Then there is the Archon Blades version where you play with 2 wizards going in Archon and out of Archon at exactly the same time, so that you have one wizard always inside and one outside of Archon. And you can buff each other with kills that will give the other wizard more Archon stacks, and the one who is outside of Archon will deal all the damage, while the other one is essentially just leeching stacks. And finally, here's a version where you have Archon and mirror images together in one setup, but it's a bit more high-end, a bit higher runs, and a bit slower. The main idea behind all those setups is that you want to ignite enemies with Disintegrate, and this will first of all give you a buff that gives you massive damage reduction and teleport cooldown reduction, so you are incredibly mobile and you can deal lots of fire damage to ignited enemies when you hit them again with a different fire skill. So you try to ignite them with Disintegrate once, and then you start spamming other abilities like Explosive Blast, like Flame Blades, or you have the mirror images doing those things for you, and they will deal this Firebird 6-piece bonus proc that deals a massive amount of burst damage. Since the set doesn't buff a specific skill, this is also the reason why there are so many different possible setups, and pretty much anything works if you want to not look too closely at the performance. Since the set doesn't buff a specific skill, you can use almost anything, and this is also the reason why there are so many different setups for this. The great part is that you can combine the Firebirds with Captain Crimson's or Oracles, or even both at the same time, because they have different pieces than the regular 6 pieces. I will mostly be talking about this mirror images setup here, because this looks to be the most consistent and the best that will probably be the main meta. So one of the main multipliers here is the Death Wish. This one gives you a huge damage bonus while you're channeling Disintegrate, so you try to not let go of that skill very much, and you try to stand still as much as possible while channeling, while having the mirror images doing all the work. Those don't really last very long though. They only have a 7-second duration, so you need to renew them frequently. And you also want to jump into Oculus Rings, and you also want to refresh your focus and restraint by attacking with the Flame Blades yourself every 5 seconds. So there are a few things to do, and you don't really have much of a window of opportunity to actually DPS with your mirror images. Other than this, you have Explosive Blast for the Orb of Infinite Death that gives you a huge 80% damage reduction and 40% damage multiplier. So this is a nice bonus here, and you should always have that up. Lastly, we have the Teleport for the mobility and the Magic Weapon Deflection to give you extra shield so you can protect your Squirt's necklace. Speaking of which, you do not have to go with Squirt's necklace. You can also go with the Endless Walk set, Traveler's Pledge and Compass Rose, and then have a convention in there, which is actually the 4-man push setup, or very similar to it. The only real change that you would make here for speedruns is to replace the Enforcer with another gem like the Bane of the Powerful to get a bit more extra damage. Especially very early in the season when you're unfamiliar with the build and a bit squishy, this might be a good way to get the extra damage out of the build without really worrying too much about the Squirt's Necklace buff. In terms of stats on your items, you don't really want anything special. You stack some cooldown reduction, but it's not really a big requirement, at least in this setup. And otherwise, you can't really scale with area damage because the 6-piece bonus doesn't proc it. You can't really scale with attack speed because it just doesn't do anything as you wait for your mirror images to attack. and the only thing that you can really add is just raw damage, for example on your rings or on the weapon, and that's about it. In any case, make sure you have one arcane power on crit roll, like the offhand here. Also in the Archon setup there is a Swarmy, so you can actually roll it on the helm there, because this is a wizard hat, but always have one of those, otherwise you're gonna run out of arcane power really fast. Speaking of the Archon setup, you drop the Orgulls to get the Ashnagars and the Firebird shoulders, and you can equip the Swarmy because you have one extra Firebird piece here now. And then in the cube you just swap the Mantle of Channeling to Fazulas. The real problem comes with your shielding, because now you can't go with magic weapon deflection to protect your galvanizing ward anymore, which is the main shield mechanic that the wizard has. Typically you will have this shield coming up every 5 seconds to protect you, but if this shield takes any damage it will not refresh automatically, so it will be depleted eventually, and then you can't get it up again because you keep taking damage. And this is where other shields come in. Usually you have magic weapon deflection for this, but here you have to give that up for the Archon skill, but instead you have dominance. And dominance makes it so that you can kill enemies and get a second shield that will protect the galvanizing ward so they can refresh it. It's a little bit tricky and will require a little bit of practice, but this Archon setup can go a few tiers higher, something like maybe 5 tiers higher, while being only slightly slower. So this is something to consider once you have a decent setup. Once you go a bit higher and maybe want to push your gems a bit higher, then you can eventually go with this Archon setup and do something like 4-minute runs at like 125 plus. For the Archon setup, it's important to have a certain amount of cooldown reduction, so you want to stack it on pretty much every piece besides the amulet. You can even leave out one piece. You want to have around 67% shield cooldown reduction, because this allows you to go into Archon every 40 seconds. And the idea is to go into Archon, spend 20 seconds waiting for the other wizard to feed you, and then go out and spend 20 seconds out, and then go in again exactly when it comes up. For the gameplay, the concept is rather simple, but it might require a little bit of practice for proper execution. First of all, you want to keep up your damage reduction buffs from both the combustion stacks, which you get from disintegrating, and the explosive blast Orb of Infinite Death combo. Don't forget to buff yourself with magic weapon deflection at the start of every run. Then teleport with your group. Typically you should have a Z Barb and a Z Deonut in your party, so they will help you out to give you damage buffs, group up enemies a little bit, and also give you CC immunity so that you can channel in peace without getting knocked back and these kind of things. And try to teleport exactly on top of big packs of enemies or elite packs and summon your mirror images. They have really crappy AI, so they run around and sometimes don't hit anything, and you have to play around a little bit by basically forcing them right on top of the enemy, and this is typically when they work the best and actually attack the target that you want to attack. Worst case, just wait for a cooldown and resummon them again. It only takes a few seconds to come up, but keep in mind that you actually lose the Death Wish buff every time you do this, so you want to avoid spamming them, and typically want to play around Oculus Rings, for example, on the large poles, or the Convention cycle when you have Convention of Elements in the build. And also make sure that you attack once every 5 seconds with the Flame Blades. So typically the rotation is teleport in, mirror image, Flame Blade, and then channel disintegrate. And this is how you deal damage. You just wait for mirror images to kill everything, and you can spam Explosive Blast at the same time to deal a bit of extra damage and also keep a buff up. In the reverse Archon meta, this is very similar. You just need to make sure that you don't mess up the timing with the other wizard. So you need to coordinate this, and you have to have one wizard go in immediately at the start of the run, and then this wizard has to tell the other wizard when the Archon is about to end so that they can go in. And afterwards you always just look at your Archon stacks, because exactly when the buff expires is the time when you need to press Archon again every time. A little trick here is that at the end of the run, when you spawn the Rift Guardian and you're in Archon, you can't really do anything, so you can right click the Archon buff to disable it, and you will lose a lot of the damage buff, but at least you can contribute a little bit to finish off the boss. Lastly, there's also the Flame Blade setup that I haven't talked that much about, but it's a simpler version of all the others. Here you just attack yourself with Flame Blades all the time, and you can either play this version with Archon or without Archon, and the concepts are exactly the same. You want to keep up your buffs, you want to go this Archon cycle back and forth with the other wizard in case you have the Archon in the setup, and otherwise just attack everything with the Flame Blades and kill it. The good part about the manual Flame Blades is that you have the full control and you don't have to mess with the mirror image of the eye, which can be quite frustrating. But that setup simply is a bit weaker and a bit behind, but it can go a little bit faster than the others. And that concludes this guide. So in short summary, just integrate everything for the Ignite buff, make sure you keep up your Explosive Blast, and then have mirror images or Flame Blades to kill all the enemies. Personally, I'm very hyped for the season. I can't wait to farm with this and have a lot of fun. My group is gonna go for this. I'll be a wizard and he's gonna have lots of fun this time around. So I hope you'll have too. Hope you liked this video, and I'll see you guys next time.